Welcome to the Amazon Legends podcast, where we have real stories about making it big on Amazon. Our guests are CEOs of large companies and entrepreneurs who became powerful sellers, also experts specializing in helping sellers, and both former and current Amazon employees who will give us an insight from behind the scenes. Here's your host, Nick Urison.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Amazon Legends. My next guest today is an advertising executive turned entrepreneur, and she spent 3 decades in beauty industry and passionate about mentoring women to be entrepreneurs. And she's the co-founder and CEO of MASAMI. And so everybody, meet my guest, Lynn Power. Welcome to the show, Lynn.
Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh, 3 decades. It makes me sound so old.
Well, you don't look a year older than maybe 28.
Just a little, barely.
Yeah, so you started in the womb.
Exactly.
That's what makes you a natural entrepreneur. So when you and I first met and we talked about, overall life, entrepreneurship and everything, you said that you focused on something different than everybody else before starting your Amazon operation. So tell us what those things are.
Yeah, I mean, it's really 3 things: community, community, community.
So tell me about what that means. Are you talking about the community as your audience, or community as your team, or support group, your other entrepreneurs?
It's actually all of the above. I think these days it's so important to have a community of, yes, your customers, that's critical. And you have to really nurture them and focus on them. But what I found, it's also equally valuable to have a community of other entrepreneurs, like-minded brands, peers, advisors, support system, help, people who have done Amazon before, people who have succeeded in it and failed in it, and you can learn from and you can share. And so, yeah, I think that has been invaluable. And we found ways to really leverage that and make that a core part of our business.
So let's break that down, because it's important. Everything you said is important. So you're basically talking about the grand strategy of the divide and conquer, right? So you are focusing on what is it that I need, and then whatever that need is, you're surrounding yourself with people who can provide something for that need, and then you move on to something else, and then again another group. So these are all individual communities that you're creating. So let's start from your support as an entrepreneur. Do you align yourself with other entrepreneurs who do the same thing that you do, or a mix of totally unrelated, different professions, nevertheless entrepreneurs? So which one do you go for, similar versus diverse?
I actually like both for different reasons. And I love that you're asking this, because people don't usually dig into this. But I think it's important to have a community of like-minded people who are similar to you in that they're trying to do a similar thing. They don't have to be in the exact same business as you, but they're trying to build an e-com business. They're maybe they launched around the same time you did. They've got similar challenges. They're on Shopify, et cetera, because you can learn so much from what's working, what's not working, even just comparing metrics, even comparing just, data and benchmarks is just really helpful. But I've found that that's really good for almost like the business fundamentals. But the lightning strikes with the second group you mentioned, which are those people that you have nothing in common with, and you think, oh my gosh, did I really commit to having, an hour chat with this person? What am I going to talk about? And then by the end, you're like, oh my God, I learned so much, so interesting. And it sparked all these different ideas because they are just in a completely different world than you. And I think we do have a tendency, or at least I did when I was in advertising, and certainly now, you have a tendency to be very navel gazing. You know what I mean? And focus on people that are in your very small circle. But I think creativity is about dot connecting, which means you have to get out of your circle and find people in that other world. Just one tip for people, and you probably know this, but there are a couple of places you can go if you don't know how to do this besides LinkedIn. One is Lunch Club. It's free to join, and they set you up with a random connection. You can do once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, once a month, whatever. And I found that the quality of people have been extraordinarily high. And you just find really interesting people, and it's business. It's not dating.
Yeah.
Not like a dating app.
There is a site called It's Only Lunch. That's not what we're talking about.
That's not what this is. This is not that. This is strictly business, but it's been really good. The people I've met have been just really curious, really interesting. I think it attracts a certain type of people. And the other one, it's similar but different, is called Current, Current. And again, free to join. You actually get paid to do panels and whatnot, but you can connect with topics that interest you. If you're into NFTs, you can join a panel on NFTs. And the cool thing is there's lots of people that come together, lots as in 20 or 30, but they come at it from a different angle. So I may come at things from marketing, somebody else's operations, somebody else's tech, somebody else's e-com. So, you really do get like a much bigger picture of whatever that topic is than just my narrow brain, because my brain can only handle so much.
Sure. So I'm glad you picked up on what I picked up on. So, because this is such a big deal. So I belong to an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization.
Okay.
So this is a global organization. When I say global, I don't mean US, Canada, and Mexico. I mean like Japan, South Africa, you name it, all over. So it's a group of entrepreneurs all over the world formed this. And the roots of it is, it goes back to, of course, started in the US. I believe 12 college graduates decide to go into business, and they say, why don't we meet every month and hang out so that we can learn from each other's experiences? So they were sharing their experiences, and like several months into the whole thing, one of them commits suicide.
Oh.
And they were heartbroken. They said, how did we not see this coming? So it was at that point that they created the organization, which runs on processes. It's extremely process driven. When I say process, there are certain practices that you do. Like, for example, for brainstorming, there's a format. For sharing things, there's a format. For giving advice, there's a format. And they have something called Gestalt. So I'm promoting EO now because I'm a great fan, but this is a real support group. I recommend for every entrepreneur to join. So there's something called Gestalt, which basically means that you speak from experience. You never say, oh, you should do this. Never. But sometimes that is necessary. But you know how you say it? You say there's a format. You say it's called walking in your shoes. So you say, well, if I were in your shoes, I would do this. You don't say you should do this. If I were in your shoes. So in other words, they built these processes. So the reason why I mention all this is every month there is a 4-hour meeting. Every month.
Wow.
Everything is confidential in the meeting. You can't even tell your significant other who was at the meeting and where the meeting was. None of those things. Total confidentiality so that people can maintain. And if you break that confidentiality, you get thrown out. It's a big no-no. And during that meeting, you have a 7-minute presentation where everybody, usually 8 to 10 people in a group, it goes around the table, and in 7 minutes, you give update on family, friends, business, and personal. Any challenges going on, and you give update, and there is somebody. It's just like a company. There is the moderator. They call it the moderator. Somebody leads the group every year, and you do it in turns. And there is somebody called parking attendant. What the parking attendant does is he's listening to what the presenter is saying, just like everybody else. And then you do your update, I believe, in 4 minutes. And then the other 3 minutes, it goes around the table. And you know what people are listening for? And the parking attendant is making notes. What you didn't mention.
Huh. Interesting.
So the parking attendant puts it down. And then at the end of the whole round, there is a roundup. And in the roundup, a presentation subject is picked based on what you reported as a challenge. And then and then you get assigned a date, and then you present. And it's like, I believe it's about 45 minutes or so. So you're doing a whole presentation about that particular challenge that you didn't even think about. And everybody else then goes around the table giving their feedback. Because nobody's problems are unique. So everybody had something. So that's where the experience share comes into play. So these are the kinds of things. And the essence of this is you could be a guy who owns a grocery store. You could have an e-commerce person. You could have a payroll expert. That diversity completely opens up to scrutiny the things that you are going through that you're not actually taking into consideration.
That's really powerful. I love that you're talking about that, because it is true. It's like, usually when you do these connections, you focus on the work stuff, but you don't get into the family, the friends, the personal as much. And usually everyone's going through something, right? Like, it's very rare to find somebody that is like perfect and has nothing going on in their life but positivity.
That would be boring.
That would be boring. I mean, I can't swear. Sorry. I was going to say, I've been going through cancer the last year, right? So hence my short haircut.
Yeah.
Because it's growing out post chemo. But you know, it's just what it is. But you'd be shocked at how many other people that I talk to who are like, oh my God, I had that, or I know somebody, or my husband or my wife, or this or that. It's like everybody has something.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting into also empathy and how important that is these days, to really listen and understand and connect with the people that you're surrounding yourself with, not just bounce things off of them now and then, you know?
Well, you know, there's another real fact, especially for entrepreneurs. We don't like to be told what to do, right?
That's true.
So, but when somebody says...
Old ones like me, that's even worse.
I tell you a funny story. We were at an event, several hundred people at the event, and they were told, and everybody was told, okay, everybody line up here to get in. So, and these are all entrepreneurs, hundreds of entrepreneurs. So we are all lined up waiting, and the line is not a straight line. It's all over the place. And the people who are managing the event, they are like screaming, you know, to get in line, get in line. And my friend standing right in front of me turned around and says, well, don't these people know? We don't like to be told what to do. That's why we are entrepreneurs, for God's sake.
So true, though.
Good luck. But when somebody says, oh, I had the same situation, then we listen, right? It's a whole different approach. And then, of course, if it's an unfortunate situation, I'm sorry to hear about yours. It's somebody who had similar. It's total empathy, and then you connect with the person more, and you become more receptive. So I totally get it. So I mean, obviously, I'm gonna ask a rhetorical question, but why do you need to have that support system around you? I mean, you are a leader. You're running a business. Why do you need that?
Boy, I think everyone needs it. I don't care how old you are or how much experience you have or how confident you are. I mean, look, I've met 20-year-olds who think they don't need any help, right? But I think we all, first of all, none of us can know everything. This is the thing. The world is way too complicated. I think back in the Don Draper advertising days, it was a little bit easier. You know, you do TV, there's print, there's out of home. You can kind of wrap your head around all that. I was a little bit more creative in a black box. But now, I mean, the algorithms change before you even learn them. It's
Sure.
like just getting up to speed on the new Facebook algorithm, it's already changed. So you just have to sort of recognize that as much as many of us entrepreneurs like to be control freaks, we can't. We have to have other people around us that know things and that can guide us and that can support us. And that's why I think you just need it. You have to recognize that there are smarter people than you. And, and you may be smart in certain areas, and that's great. But I guarantee I'm not a TikTok expert. I'm not, an SEO expert. I mean, there are people way smarter than me in lots of things. So I think the key is when you're building your group, find people that have complementary skills, not clones of yourself. Like, I don't need lots of other advertising people. You know what I mean? Like, that's not helpful to me. But what I think is really helpful is when I find somebody who's like really an expert in like email marketing. Oh my God, I'm going to pick their brain. It's going to be really useful. And vice versa. And I think, if you think about the skill sets that you need to survive these days as an entrepreneur, and you could literally write down what those things are, capabilities, skill sets, type of experience, and then you could try to build a network of people that kind of have those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I give you another aspect of it. To me, it's perspective, right? So you have a totally different perspective. We are too close to the subject matter whenever we're working on something. So somebody who's outside that, I find it very valuable. Okay, so now let's move on to the whole another community as the customers, right? So without customers, we can't. Doesn't matter how many ideas.
Yeah.
So
right.
So you've been in advertising, so you know this. So tell us about. By the way, I'm going to add one more thing. When you're building an Amazon business, it's so important to have your own following, right? Just having Amazon PPC to drive sales, that doesn't really, it's not as valuable as you creating your own following. So tell us about some best practices to build your community of customers around your products and your brand.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of times people do assume that you can just be on Amazon and that's it. But there's lots of little things you can do to create connections between your customers and Amazon. And also it's recognizing that Amazon is just where people are, including people that buy from you from your website. They're still going to Amazon and buying other stuff. So I think, the basic tricks that everyone knows, but are still very true: social media and content, super important to build your customers. Education, email marketing is still incredibly effective. Creating customer loyalty programs. There's so many things you can do to try to build your customer base and have it be more than just a transactional thing. Unfortunately, Amazon is more transactional because of the nature, but your customers don't have to be. And so, having a place where they can even post questions or just being transparent and accessible. I mean, my phone number is on, I think it's on all of our, our website, our social media. Like, so literally people call me, "Is this MASAMI?" I'm like, "Yes, this is MASAMI." They have no idea that they're calling the founder, right? They just are calling the number, but it's a way for me to be in touch with what people want, what their questions are, what their issues are. And I don't get a ton of calls. It's not like I'm bombarded with calls.
People don't like to spend time on the phone anymore.
No, they don't.
They'd rather chat. They'd rather chat than phone.
Chat or email or text, but yeah. So, but I think just having those options available for people to be able to reach out.
So how does one start? So give us some tips. So let's say that you've got a lady who's come up with an idea for a great new skin product.
Yeah.
And they've got everything right in terms of production, their brand, but they don't really, they don't have a community yet. So what is the way to start building your community?
So one of the first things I tell people is just make sure you have a viable business, because I can't tell you how many startups that I've met over the last few years who had an idea that they thought was absolutely brilliant, but literally like them and two other people in the universe. it wasn't a scalable idea. I mean, this one woman I met had this idea to create office capes. This was pre-COVID, by the way, but it was like a Seinfeld episode. I mean, really? Like, no, like I just didn't have the heart to tell her, like, it's a terrible idea. So my advice was do some homework, talk to friends and family. Don't just talk to people who are going to be nice to you and say that they love it. Like, do some research and make sure that it's actually an idea that people will spend $100 on an office cape. You know what I mean? So if you're, and in beauty, it's so crowded. It's so crowded. So it's like, you could have a great skincare brand and it might be the most brilliant brand on the planet and work incredibly well, but it's just a matter of there's 500 brands like, not even 500, 5,000, 50,000. There's so many brands like yours that, you know, you really need to be, again, starting with all this other stuff, community and everything else. So to your question though, where do you start? I think there are a couple things you can do. You know, one is, again, starting with social media and content and really building that out, and finding people who are influencers or people that are just really great customers, and creating some, you know, user-generated content. Getting people to write reviews is really critical, because people then, you know, they want to know what their peers think. They don't want to just know what the brand thinks, right? So that's really important. And then, you know, building your following and building your email. And one of the best ways to build your email list, because when you start, you have like nothing.
Sure.
It's partnering with other like-minded brands. So this goes back to community. We were able to grow our email list from about 2,000 or 2,500 when we launched to over 30,000 today, which, you know, it's still small.
How much time did that take?
That took about 18 months. But it's small, but they're targeted. They're people that are clean beauty advocates, that already buy clean beauty products, that, you know, are the right prospects. Because you can grow a list by buying people, but there's no point. You don't need customers who aren't going to appreciate you or value. Because also, by the way, these days with the privacy laws, people will unsubscribe or report you as spam. And before you know it, you're getting warnings and flags, you know, from Klaviyo or MailChimp or wherever you're using, and you're going to have problems. So you really do need to be thoughtful about how to build that out with the right kind of customers.
So,
and I think
one thing that I also can tell people is, especially at the beginning, when you're starting from scratch, obviously numbers are small. So you've got only a few hundred people or whatever. So I say, don't focus on how many people you have on your mailing list. Focus on the engagement. So if you have, let's say you have 300 people, and if the engagement is pretty high, like 1 out of 4 people respond when you send out something, that's much better than having 300,000 people and you have, you know, very low engagement rate, right? So, and I think this goes back to what you were talking about, getting user-generated content. That means that they are engaged, right? So you are, but a lot of people don't really understand this. One of the mechanics of sending out a mailer is to make it actionable. Put specific calls to action. And don't just say, call us. You know, it doesn't mean anything. But provide links that they can click and then fill out a form or post something, or it goes direct to whatever. So get some kind of calls to action built into your mailer. So that way, it doesn't matter how small the list is, it's going to have much, much higher retention rate. And then also, you know, another thing that we do is transparency, like how many people on the list and how many people participate, who are the top 10 participants and things like that. So it makes a big difference. So those are kinds of best practices that I always recommend. So what is your take on it? What are some things that you do to have your engagement rate high?
Yeah, I think what you're suggesting, those are great ideas. Yeah, we always, we do encourage our customers to send pictures, leave reviews, reviews with pictures, post stories, post, questions, all of the above, I think is great. And then, the key is though, it can't be one-sided, right? So if you're asking your customer to do something, you've got to then respond back.
Sure.
So if you've got your customer posting a question because you said, hey, put your questions, then you can't ignore it. You have to actually engage. So sometimes people forget that it's actually like there's work involved and you have to be kind of on it, because if you're not and you wait a couple days and then all of a sudden somebody didn't hear back from you, it's not good. So you have to have somebody kind of monitoring your social to make sure that they're staying on top of, all that stuff. Whether it's you or somebody on your team or an intern or whoever, but, that's definitely important.
So at the beginning, we said when you started MASAMI, you focused on community. So how did you leverage that community when you launched your Amazon operation?
So what we did is we actually, when we launched MASAMI, we had a soft launch for about 3 months with friends and family to get product out and to get people to try it and start to build, the sort of buzz around it. Then when we launched our e-com site, we already had some built-in customers, which helped. And then when we launched Amazon, same thing. We were able to say like, okay, we know all of you are already on Amazon. We are too. And I think that really helps. But what we also do is we're pretty active on Amazon. We do daily posts. So, you can see our brand feed is very active. And then we also do live streams. We probably do 1 or 2 a month, but I will tend to post those out to our followers and say, hey, catch us on Amazon Live, so that they can ask questions, be part of it. Because I just think, again, it's this acknowledgement that like, you can't put your customer in a box and expect them to only buy one way from you. You have to be flexible and kind of go where they are. And if they would prefer to buy from you on Amazon, well, that's great because you're on Amazon,
Sure.
So I think it's just being pragmatic. I know a lot of e-com founders who struggle with that. They want to own the customer. They don't want their customer going to Amazon. So they'll be on Amazon, but they don't want to promote it. Do you know what I mean? And it's,
I see that. I think it's a big mistake, but
I do too.
Yeah. So you said a couple of things. I think we need to unpack that because those are very important concepts. So tell us about brand feed. So you said we post daily. How does one do that as a seller?
Yeah. So on Seller Central I think it's in the, thinking where it is, in the advertising tab, it's kind of buried, but there is a place where it says posts and you can build out daily posts. And a thing I love about Amazon is you can actually schedule your posts. So you can build out a month or 2 at a time so that you're not having to do it every day. You just spend a couple hours on a Saturday, which I just did this past weekend and put all my August posts in there and build them all out. And that way you've got content that's constantly out there, that's being seen, that's hopefully searchable because you're putting in, what you think are the right types of keywords in there.
And where does that show up?
Well, if you look at our products, you can see there's, I don't know how far down the page it is, but you can see a feed where it shows up. And on our
the product detail page.
Yes. So you can see that. So you can literally, and it almost looks like Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So people are used to that now, right? They're used to those types of kind of posts. And so it feels like it's a little bit more like an Instagram social. And you can put things like pictures of your customers, but you can also put product shots, ingredient shots, pictures of, in our case, Japan.
How about video?
You can put, I don't think you can put video in the post, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I am mistaken. I have to check that. But you can put video on your page, obviously, with your A+ content.
Sure.
So you can do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, I haven't been doing video. I think I tried and maybe they've updated it, but I tried and I couldn't, the video, I wasn't able to do it. So I've been just doing more like Instagram static posts.
Yeah. So the other thing you mentioned is Amazon live streaming. So tell us about that, and how do you do that, and what is the best way to do it?
So that is through Amazon. I think it's amazon.com/live. I think that's how you get there. But it's super easy to do. I mean, if you have a store, you can literally create a live stream. You have to schedule it. So you need to put in some details around what it is, a picture. I usually create a picture in Canva that has our products with the Amazon logo and the time, because then I also push it out on our social feeds. And that way you've got some consistency. And then it's a pretty straightforward process to actually do the live. We do a lot of live streaming. So we're on 5 or 6 different live streaming platforms. This one is probably one of the easier ones because it's literally like you click a button, you go on and you go live. Some of them are a little more complicated and require a bit more setup, but you can do, a half an hour show. You can use it to educate. You can talk about your product benefits. You can do demonstrations. You can have models.
And how is that promoted? How do people find out there is a live stream?
So one way is through Amazon's own algorithm, and they have a lot of influencers who do live streams as well. So you're part of that. And the more, they have a whole ranking system so that the more hours you do, the higher up the pyramid you go. So it does take work, because if you only do one live stream every 6 months and you expect that to be visible, it's not going to happen. They're looking for people who are committed, who are doing it, who are on the platform. So you really have to make it like part of your activities of what you do and try to do it, I would say, weekly.
And how does that connect to the product page? Are you able to put the URLs?
You're able to connect it to the product page. And I think, I can't remember, but there are what the tiers are called, but they have different, it's like creator tier. I can't remember what they call them, but when you start, you're at the bottom tier. You get so many hours and so many followers, you get up a tier, and then you work your way up. It's very hard to get into the top tiers where they're, show up on the homepage of Amazon Live, that kind of thing. But it certainly helps to, like I said, frequency, and encouraging people to follow you. That's important too, to follow your brand and follow your live streams. And so like what we've done also is we'll do an email blast to, now we have the 30,000 emails, and we'll say, we're doing a live stream, please follow, please watch. And we can also do special codes. You can create a promotion. So, you can do lots of things to make it enticing for people.
Yeah. So you just mentioned something that I always tell people. So special codes, the promotion. So I always say that if you're going to run a promotion, make sure that it comes with a price tag. In other words, by all means, give people X% off, but don't just say X% off. Okay. What do you have to do to qualify for it, right? So there has to be something. So I always say either do a minimum order value of this, then you get so much off, or it's only available for the next 48 hours or whatever, and then you run the promotion. So or they need to buy 2 different items, something along those lines. You just cannot do quid pro quo, leave a review, get this, that you cannot do. That's against Amazon policy. But as far as getting that promotion code, they have to do something. Don't just offer it for free so that you can increase your sales. So there has to be something. So so this is great. yeah, I'm sure that listeners will dig into it, because this is not something that gets much coverage these days. I mean, also it's a lot of work, right? Doing a
It's a
live
lot of work. But it depends on the category you're in, like for beauty, it's really helpful to do live shows because people want to see the products and the results. If you're in a category which is super self-explanatory, if you're selling, printer paper, you don't necessarily need to do a live stream for that. You know what I mean? So I think it just depends on, but yeah, I would say if you have a product that's, food or beauty or something that lends itself to just sort of a deeper conversation, the live streaming is just incredibly helpful. And you can also, if you don't know how to do it, you can watch a ton of shows, you can get ideas.
Exactly.
Some of the shows, people are really kooky. There's a guy who's a hairstylist who dresses up in weird outfits and that's his shtick. And I think it's just entertainment. So people watch it. We don't do weird outfits, but we're more like, we'll do, a lot of more education around, because we have a Japanese ingredient that no one's heard of called makabu. So it's a seaweed. So we will often talk about seaweed and the benefits and why you want clean products and some of those things that are more educational in nature.
Yeah. This entertainment discussion reminded me of something. One day I was on a flight, and that boring, information that they tell you about what happens if something goes wrong, that
Yes.
your oxygen masks are here. So they got this recording. It was it plays in the screen, and they got this guy with an extremely funny accent, and he was singing the instructions and making jokes. And I'm telling you, I watched the whole thing. Everybody was glued to the screen. And the guy was just walking through the instructions, what to do in case of emergency, blah, blah, blah. Your masks are here, your life jacket is under the seat. But it's like, nothing that you never heard before. But that was so entertaining. So these days, entertainment seems to be the driving force for people to actually learn something, right?
Yeah, it is tricky, because also when you're doing a lot of shows, you start to run out of ideas, right? Like, what else can you do? So and then I have to remind myself that we're not getting the same viewers each time. So it almost, doesn't really matter if you're repeating. To you, it might feel boring, but maybe to somebody coming in and watching it, it's not. So.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. So I always, because what happens is for the podcast, we release one episode every week these days, and that is likely to go up. We're going to do more than a week. But when I talk to people, I say, well, you should listen to this episode, or, listen to the episode with Lynn, because she talks about Amazon Live. But, I need to mention that in multiple episodes, because even though it's a repeat for me, you don't know who is listening to which episode. So,
right.
But as the person doing it, you tend to forget. And so sometimes I repeat things, but things that are important, it's important to repeat. The other thing that I want to mention, I needed to create a video for something. I don't remember now what, but I went to a company that does it, and the first thing they asked me, suddenly I was puzzled. I thought, I never thought about it. You have to write a script, right? So whatever you get, you can't just start, because it's live, you can't just start talking. You have to have a script for whatever you're going to do, so that it's going to run smoothly without any interruptions. You're thinking, what do I say next, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you do a lot of them, you don't have to be as scripted. It's like us doing podcasts, right? You don't need to be scripted, and I don't really need to be scripted. But if you're new to it, 100% you're right. Like, you have to have your talking points. And what you can do is even just like tape it up on your, I'm pointing here, computer, like to the side. so that you've just got like your little cheat sheet there of, you know, the key things that you need to hit. Because it is hard and it's a different thing for a lot of people that aren't used to doing it. Because it feels a little weird. It's like a one-way thing. You're just talking. And some of the shows, you can do lots of lengths, right? And some of the live streams we do, they can be 5 minutes and others can be an hour. If you're filling an hour, that's a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
and
you gotta
also, if you do it well, it's also not interaction, right? It's you talking yourself.
Exactly.
So it gets a little bit hard, especially if you are an introvert. It's hard to be talking to yourself or talking into the camera.
Oh, so one thing I recommend, this goes back to community. If you have other brands that are also on those platforms, Amazon, we're on TalkShop Live, we're on a few others, you can do joint shows, which makes it much more interesting, because then you and I could do a show together where we're talking about each other's products, we're having a conversation. It's not just me talking to camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I usually encourage people to do when they're starting out also. It's like, find a couple of brands that live where you do, or some of the platforms allow multiple brands to connect virtually, like on Zoom, and others, it's better to be in the same place.
Oh, I see. Okay. Physically same place.
Physically in the same place. Like, but so I think you can just try different things and see what works for you. And some people, like, I enjoy that a lot more.
So what are some of the measurables that you can get from the brand feed as well as Amazon Live? Do you get the stats of how many people?
You get the stats, you know exactly how many people viewed it, you know what the engagement and the click-throughs were, you know the sales. So it's really helpful. And then, you know, you can have a goal for yourself. If you had 100 viewers, your first show or second show, you try to go, okay, how can I get that to be 200 or 300? And you can try different times a day, because there is a little bit of a method to the madness. You know, if you're doing it on a Sunday morning, you're going to get a different audience than on a Friday night, you know, so you just have to kind of figure out where your audience is, and when they are shopping. And you probably will have a clue based on your sales. If you look at your Amazon sales and what time of day they tend to come in and what days are most popular, then you could kind of go, okay, if I'm getting a lot of sales on, you know, Thursday at lunch, you know, because people are just like, you know what, I worked, I need a little break, I'm going to do a little online shopping. That might be a good time for your live stream, you know, so you can start to use some data to inform your decisions. It doesn't have to just be completely shot in the dark.
Yeah. What is your best shopping day or weekday? Which weekday?
We actually do really well on Saturday.
Really?
Yeah, I think it depends though. If the weather is really nice out, no. If the weather is like it's been here where it's super hot and people are inside, or it's super cold, then the weekends tend to be better. If it's really hot, then it ends up being like a Tuesday. Like if like we have like a random day that people just, you know.
Okay. So when I was a seller, and this is now going back about eight years or so, the best shopping day for us was Mondays.
Mondays, okay.
And I heard that from many other sellers, Mondays. It may not be the case anymore, but at least until like 5 years ago, I knew this was Monday. It may still be the case for some categories.
Yeah.
So I was curious about why Monday. And then somebody told me a story. I don't know if this is the reason, but it sounded reasonable to me. So if you remember going way back to the beginning of the internet days, there was dial-up modems, right? So the 14400 then became 28800. You know, some that it would connect, and then finally, you know, you would connect to the website, and the website would load. So basically, the individual users had this dial-up modems, which was slow. But at work, companies got, you know, dedicated lines, either DSL line or T1 line or whatever you want to call. It was not fiber then, but it was still, you know, wired fast speed. So basically, people would be fed up of slow internet connection all weekend. And then as soon as they came to work on Mondays, fast internet, they were doing their shopping.
Interesting.
So that became a habit for being very busy on Mondays and shopping.
That's
and
really interesting.
Of course, this is no longer the case. Everybody has high speed connection. But of course, some habits die very hard. So
that's true.
So tell me some magic numbers that you watch to make sure that your operation is performing as planned.
I mean, for us, obviously, you're looking at your sales. That's super critical. But one of the numbers that I love the most is our repeat purchase, because knowing that customers like our products and come back is gold. Otherwise, you're just filling the leaky bucket over and over and over, and it's really hard to get ahead. That's tricky on Amazon because you don't know who's buying. So it's that's one of the downsides of Amazon. But I think, like I said, you can kind of triangulate with your own data to see like, okay, if we have a very high repeat purchase rate. It's about 35%, which for hair care is really, really high. So it's like, if you know that you're getting that, then you hope on Amazon, you're going to get, similar numbers. So you have to look at it like, all the effort you're putting into getting these customers, if 1 out of 3 of them sticks around to become a lifetime customer, that's huge, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in your case also, your products are perfect for subscribe and save, right? So
absolutely.
So that gives you an indication. So specific to Amazon, how do you measure the success of a listing?
I mean, obviously it's how many sales I get from that particular listing. And I kind of know, again, based on my own e-commerce, what the volume is and which products perform the best. So if it looks like on Amazon, there's one that's just not getting traction. Actually, this happened to me last month. For some reason, I wasn't getting shampoo sales, and shampoo is like, it's our best seller. So I went, and Amazon had made my listing inactive.
Oh my God.
And then when I dug into it, their AI had decided that our size was incorrect. Don't know why. So we are a 10-ounce product, and it was saying that Amazon is telling us that it's 10.1 ounces. And I'm like, it's not. So I had to go back and forth to get that fixed, which it did. They fixed it actually pretty quickly. But that's the only thing with Amazon, is you have to stay on top of some of that stuff, because it was probably inactive for 3 or 4 days, right? Before I realized, like, wait a minute. Yeah. Why is that one not selling? It sells a lot,
So I tell you what, there are certain data points that you have to be watching, and you have to be watching every day and in perspective. In other words, just looking at it that day is not enough. You have to be comparing it to the past. And I don't mean past just last week, last month, last quarter, last year, this time. So all those things you need to be watching. And one of those data points is the most important one to me is conversion rate. That means how many people hit the product page and how many of them ended up buying. That one is key to everything. I say that's what I call my second magic bullet. Out of the 2 magic bullets I have for success, that's the second one. First one is your click-through rate on the search results. So these are things that you want to be watching. But also in your case, buy box retention. So buy box retention, if you are the only seller for your product, which you should be, you should have 100% buy box. Sometimes you will lose the buy box to Amazon because they may give a refund and then decide to keep it because they don't feel that they can really put it back in stock. At the same time, they don't want to penalize you either because of something the customer may have done. It may have been an open box or whatever. So they sell it as Amazon warehouse. So they start competing with it. And then that will drop the buy box to like 98%, which is not a big deal. But sometimes, especially recently, Amazon is promoting Amazon Business, which encourages people to search some good products, and then they buy in quantity, large quantity, at business discounts that Amazon provides. Nothing to do with you. You end up making a legitimate sale, they end up making a legitimate purchase, and the next thing is they are selling it under your listing. So yeah, it becomes a quantity sale, then you end up losing the buy box. If the listing is closed down, of course, you're not there. So buy box retention is another thing that I always watch, again, in perspective, because if you are in the buy box 100% of the time, 100 orders that come to that page will come to you. If you are there 90% of the time, 10 orders are going somewhere else.
Right.
So you want to stay on top of this. So those are things that I always say, you need to accept. There is no easy way to stay on top of this because you have to download data all the time. And then you have to have a fairly elaborate Excel file that you built yourself that will show. It becomes complicated, but that's one way to do it. So one of the questions that I usually ask is, if you could change one thing in Amazon policies for third-party sellers, what do you think that would be?
Well, it would be giving us the customer data.
Well, they won't do that because it's
that would be nice. Yeah, I know. They wouldn't do that. Okay, so what else would it be? I don't love some of their policies around what's the word I'm looking for? When your products, so I've tried to be on Amazon in Singapore, UK, and Singapore, once you're on for a certain time, they expire and they just dump your products. Oh. And so that's something that is annoying because my products actually don't expire. It's shampoo and it doesn't, so.
How do they decide that this product has an expiration date?
They require it there. So you have to put it in. And then also, like, if they're in inventory too long in their warehouse, some of them will dispose your product rather than charging you a storage fee. So in Singapore, my products basically got dumped because they sat there too long. And it was fine because I didn't ship them a lot. I was more experimenting to see what the market was. But the reality is some of the Amazon markets don't have as many options in terms of the advertising. They're newer markets. And so you're limited in what you can do. And it was also really expensive to ship the products there. And they require, I didn't know this at the time, but if I would have wanted them shipped back, Amazon requires them to be shipped to a Singapore address. They wouldn't ship them back to the US. So I would have had to find somebody in Singapore and arrange to get them shipped there and then get them shipped to me. And honestly, it was like not worth it. I just was like, fine, just.
Well, I mean, this opens up selling internationally. So I actually had a guest last week. His episode is going to come out like 2 months from now, but he's an expert in international marketplaces.
Nice.
And he was so diligent about walking us through the things that one needs to do. It's not just, click here, and now we are in the UK market. Now we are in Germany. Now we are, no. You need to really think it through. Otherwise, it can cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
So this is something interesting. So Lynn, this is great. So I want to learn about you a little bit. So enough business talk. So let's get personal a little bit. So tell us, where did you grow up? and tell us some of the experiences you had growing up that led you to do what you do today.
Well, I grew up in Chicago, and I would say probably two things are most formative in terms of me growing up. One is that I'm a middle child. And I think when you're a middle child, you are a negotiator and a peacemaker at heart, which is, I had two brothers, older brother 2 years, younger brother 2 years. And they were like all the time. So I was the one that was like, so I think when you do that, you just have this natural ability to bring that into your work, and you become this kind of bringing people together. And so you see where we started, it all comes around, right? We started with community is about bringing people together. And that was a lot of, my childhood. But then the second thing was that my parents were small business owners. They were entrepreneurs. And now their businesses were not able to make it into today's world. And they're also, my mother is 82 now, but they had a travel agency, which, back in the day, people used to have to call the travel agent and book your tickets. And then they had an insurance agency, which similarly, people used to get all their insurance through an expert, a broker. And both of those businesses have gone completely online. I mean, I don't know if I even know of either of those. But I think seeing my parents be entrepreneurs, manage their lives, manage their businesses, that, I think always sort of resonated with me. And then when I went on to a corporate world, I loved advertising. But I think that idea of kind of, taking back control of my life just made sense.
So as far as getting into technology, I mean, you could have done anything really. But why did you get into the online business?
Well, I think if you're going to launch a brand, it was more about launching a brand that I love doing. And then it's like the pragmatic side of it is, well, you have to be online. You have to, you can't launch a beauty brand and not have an e-com site. I think that.
So do you feel that you had a little bit of a fear for becoming obsolete, like your parents' business? Online was not going to go anywhere, but up. Do you think that played a role?
Maybe it did. I mean, maybe subconsciously, I want to stay a step ahead. Maybe that's why, maybe you're getting into this psychology here, but maybe that's why I do so much like new platforms and live streaming.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody, Lynn, that may be it,
That's maybe you're onto something, but yeah, I think it is trying to stay a step ahead and figuring out where the world is going. And then, you want to be there, right?
Well, I mean, I've had aggregators on the podcast. I've had the people who are in charge of over $1 billion in sales, running these brands in aggregators. I've had individual sellers. I've never had anybody who talked about so many new things that they are actually doing effectively. So you are the only one, the first one so far. Okay. So there has to be a reason for that.
That's interesting. Well, I could probably learn from some of the aggregators about some of the stuff I'm not as good at, which is getting under the hood with all the data mining.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I will, I mean, I'm so lucky with the kind of guests that I have. I'm learning myself. And then also we are highlighting different aspects of it. And aggregators these days, they're doing a great job because they take over it's typical American dream. Like somebody builds a brand and then they come in, write a check, and then now it's theirs. Now they have the reason why they've done it is because they need to really grow it, scale it. So and that comes with different challenges. So, but in your case, I can see the reason. I think you're pursuing these new things. So what else do you do other than business in your free time? What are some of your passions?
Well, I've been traveling because that also was, once I got cancer, I've been stuck at home for almost a year. I'm almost done with my treatment. My last treatment is August 17th. So that's exciting. But I did go to Spain in May, and then we just went to Belgium in a couple weeks ago, and that was fantastic. And what else? My dog.
Great. Well, I mean, dogs are always.
My dog is the best. But yeah, I mean, I'm busy. I spend a lot of time with the other founders. Oh, I didn't even mention, this was a big thing. We launched a pop-up experience. So the Conscious Beauty Collective, which launched in San Francisco earlier this year, and we're moving to Natick Mall in Boston in September. And we have 30 plus clean beauty brands.
Oh,
clean beauty and wellness brands. Yeah. So, and again, this is where we come together because we can help each other. And it's really about the power of this community and collective, being able to, because we're all small, we're all indie brands.
Sure.
It's really hard on your own, but when you have a group that's all kind of motivated by the same things, it just makes a world of difference.
Great. Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's always just on your own. The favorite analogy is, one hand. You can shake it all day long. Won't make noise, but you put two hands together, you hear the noise, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So tell us, Lynn, how can people connect with you? How can they reach out? So we will put your contact information on our website, which will get pushed out with the episodes. But give it to us now so that people can hear how they can reach out.
I'm easy to find. You can find me on LinkedIn, but you can also email me at lynn@lovemasami.com. Or you can hit me up on any of our social channels. It's Love Masami Hair, and I'll get back to you there. Yeah, easy peasy.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. You've really, you've given us a lot of, jewels.
Good, I'm glad. Yeah, this was a great conversation. I learned a lot too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of another episode, and I'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure and subscribe, rate, and review our show. And be sure and share an episode with a friend. And thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you next week here on Amazon Legends.